In 1942, Gilbert Usher Renwick was a sergeant in the Queen's Own Cameron Highlanders and participated in the raid on Dieppe. Today, he is a police officer in Vancouver and a piper in the police band.
Dieppe isn't something one wants to talk about too much, but no one can say that the fighting men who landed there weren't glorious. They were the very cream of Canada.
In 1942, Heinz Cassino was a corporal in the German 302nd Infantry Division, stationed outside of Dieppe. A Berliner before the war, he lives today in Passaic, New Jersey, where he works as a tool maker.
The Dieppe invasion was doomed to failure. When it happened, it was over quickly. I shall never forget the sight of those wounded Tommies screaming with pain on the beaches, and nobody able to help them.
On the beaches of Dieppe, the lives of Sergeant Renwick and Corporal Cassina came together for a brief moment. Two fighting men, one Canadian, one German, relive that moment in history. I'm Jim Bishop. There is a time, even in war, when friends fall out. This occurs among the Allies in the summer of 1942. The Russians are reeling under waves of German attack. They want a second front in Europe now. This would mean a full-scale invasion, impossible at this time. To lessen the pressure on the Russians and to test invasion problems, the Canadian, British, and American forces staged the biggest cross-channel raid of the war. The objective? A small coastal town in occupied France, Dieppe. The Germans are keenly aware that the Allies are under pressure from Russia to establish a second front. From Denmark to the south of France, the Wehrmacht has fortified the coastline to repel any invader. Wehrmacht General Conrad Haas commands the 302nd Infantry Division in the Dieppe sector. He has designed an elaborate defense, supplemented by the natural obstacles of high cliffs and inhospitable beaches. Assigned to duty with the 302nd Infantry Division along the northwestern coast of France is ex-Luftwaffe veteran Corporal Heinz Cassina.
I have recently attended a course in demolition and anti-tank warfare. Our instructors show us how to destroy enemy panzers with Teleminen and Polhaftlager. The first is a flat mine that you put on the ground. The second is a magnet with explosive that you can slap right on top of the panzer. There is talk of invasion, that British landings can be expected. But it is doubtful that anything will take place here at Dieppe. Here the war seems very far away. The farmers are tilling their fields. There is a feeling of quiet and peace about the countryside.
Among the thousands of Dominion troops gathered in England awaiting action is a 26-year-old platoon leader of the 2nd Canadian Division, Sergeant Gilbert Usher Renwick.
We have come from all over Canada: Ontario, Saskatchewan, Alberta, Manitoba, British Columbia. We're just part of the troops tramping around England at this time. We're over here to do whatever is needed.
April 1942, the Allies begin planning an exploratory raid on France. The port of Dieppe is selected as the target. The operation is officially described as a reconnaissance in force, an experiment of men and equipment. The purpose, to test German defensive measures and new Allied assault weapons. The plan, given the code name Operation Router, is under the direction of Lord Louis Mountbatten. May 1942. The waiting is over. The Canadian 2nd Division is picked to carry the major part of Operation Router.
We've been sent to the Isle of Wight for special training. We're training like hell day and night, getting into top condition, really good fighting shape. We're assured by our officers that we're not doing this just for fun.
July 2nd, the troops move out. They will be supplemented by a few British commandos and United States Rangers. In essence, though, this is a Canadian operation.
We don't know where we're going, but there's a wild buzz. A raid's to be made along the French coast. The secret is out. We are told that we are going to Dieppe. I think it's with a certain relief that we learn the plans. We have trained so long, we're almost overtrained.
German aircraft spot the concentration of shipping and attack. Operation Router is now canceled. A number of the Allied leaders are flatly against revival of the raid for security reasons. As thousands of troops know the plans, it is doubtful if secrecy can be maintained. Churchill favors going on. Mountbatten urges a revised raid on the condition that it can be remounted within a month. This suggestion is endorsed. The new plan, codenamed Operation Jubilee, is set for August 18th.
Everyone is confined to camp. We're ready to do whatever we're told. There's no panic, no fear. The Padre holds communion. Many of the boys attend. We just hope that in what lies ahead, we'll have a fighting chance.
August 17th, 273 ships put out to sea, bearing over 6,100 assault troops, tanks and field guns and small arms. The main landings will be at Dieppe, with flank landings at Puy and Bernval on the left, Pourville and Varangeville on the right. The 4 flank attacks are scheduled for 4:50 a.m. A half hour later, the major landings at Dieppe. 3:47 a.m. Only 7 miles off the French coast, a portion of the Allied convoy is discovered by German naval units. Elements of the Allied flotilla. Yet, unaware of the magnitude of the Canadian force, They report the encounter as a normal convoy incident. The Allied fleet continues on course. It is too late to turn back. 4:45 a.m. Within 7 minutes, 3 of the flank landings are made. The encountered opposition is light.
We see the red, blue, and lilac-colored flags, the Leuchtturm. They've made a landing. It's hard to believe.
5:01 a.m. The Germans sound the alarm along the entire sector. .07 a.m. The fourth landing at Puy, to the left of Dieppe, is 15 minutes late. It is smashed on the beaches. 5:12 a.m. The Royal Navy opens fire on Dieppe. Hurricanes and Spitfires sweep in to cover the landings. .20 a.m. The first assault waves hit the beaches of Dieppe. They are met by murderous fire from the German snipers and machine gun emplacements. The initial bombardment has failed to subdue the enemy. The men are methodically slaughtered as enfilade fire sweeps across their defenseless positions. Within minutes, regiments are reduced to company size. 5:35 a.m. 30 tanks reach the bullet-infested beach. They become prime targets for the German artillery. The well-placed Germans are able to drench the invaders with deadly crossfire. At Dieppe, over 2,000 men are pinned down, unable to regroup or maneuver.
We have driven the Tommies back to the beaches. They are not an easy enemy. They are not cowards. But certainly they know that they will be defeated. They have no place to go but to the sea.
5:50 a.m. The Queen's Own Cameron Highlanders head for Pourville, the second assault to strike these beaches.
We begin to wonder about a great many things as the time draws near. But of one thing we are certain. For troops who have not been in action, we're as seasoned as troops can be. Speaking for my battalion, the Camerons, we are ready for anything. We have confidence in our officers. Most of us feel that things will come off all right, that we won't be doing anything that does not give us a good chance. There's very little fire cover, but a gunboat holds up close to us and lets go at the batteries hidden in the cliffs. Our landing craft drives right up onto the sand. We jump off into a foot of water. Other boats are right behind us. The objective is a farm further inland. From there, we're to proceed to an airfield and take it. We've run into heavy crossfire outside Pourville, but we push ahead toward our objective, the airdrome of Saint-Aubin. There, we're to meet up with tanks coming from Dieppe.
In the air above the beaches, a significant battle is developing. 69 Allied squadrons sweep across the coast to intercept German aircraft, and also to pin down German reinforcements. day is up. Allied flyers make 3,000 sorties, forcing the Luftwaffe to put every available plane into the air. It is the greatest display of air power since the Battle of Britain. At Pourville to the right, the Canadians find there is no hope in obtaining their objectives. The tanks have failed to arrive from Dieppe. They begin to withdraw to the beaches.
The Germans are closing in. There's very heavy fighting. We throw up a rearguard action around the edge of the town. This may help more men to reach the beaches.
6:30 a.m. The force commanders are alarmed by the deteriorating situation. The vital headlands around Dieppe must be taken without delay. Reinforcements are rushed in. At Dieppe, the attempts to break into town are met with superior forces. Gradually, the Canadians are forced back. Without tank support or adequate firepower, they are incapable of meeting the German resistance. 7 a.m. In a final attempt to gain the Dieppe headlands, the reserve forces are ordered in. A dense smoke screen is laid to cover the approach of the landing craft. Boats emerge into a world of total destruction. The beach is swept by concentrated enemy fire. Lifespan on the beaches is now a matter of seconds. The Allied position is hopeless. The landing craft are ordered to return to sea.
It seems like a very bad dream. We're trying to get out of here, and we can't. It's unbelievable that we should be stuck on a beach with no place to go.
The men are picked off as they run back to the landing crafts. It's a terrible, terrible thing. They do not have a chance.
The German fire is terrific. The boats are being shot right out of the water. Our losses are real heavy.
German fighters and bombers managed to break through the Allied air umbrella. end comes swiftly now. The command orders full withdrawal for 11 a.m. Very few make it back to the ships. Shortly before 1 p.m., the Canadian command ship moves in near the beaches to see if further evacuation is possible. There are no signs of life. At 1:08 p.m., a message is received from the beaches. Our people here have surrendered.
I am wounded and barely conscious. It is very hard to accept the fact that it is all over. This is not the way things had been planned. There is one thing I remember as I'm taken prisoner. The lines a Cockney used to recite. And when the war is done and youth stone dead, I'll toddle safely home and die in bed.
At Dieppe, nearly 2,000 Canadians are taken prisoner, many of them seriously wounded. The ones who can walk are marched to the railroad station.
When I look at the beach, I feel sick to my stomach. Soldiers are lying about with half their bodies shot away, their limbs gone. As I look at them, all the heroism of war becomes nothing. The beach below has become a gruesome battlefield.
Operation Jubilee is over. In a moment, the conclusion of our story. The Dieppe raid lasted only 8 hours. Of the 6,100 men landed, 4,600 are either dead, wounded, or prisoners. The Canadians alone sacrificed 3,300 men from its 2nd Division. The German losses, 600 soldiers. Sergeant Renwick, wounded on the beaches and captured by the Germans, will later escape from a prisoner of war camp and return to England. Corporal Cassino later will fight at Monte Cassino, at Normandy, and in the Ardennes, where the Americans take him prisoner in 1944. On the military side, Dieppe is a stinging defeat for the Allies, a stunning victory for the Germans. But the raids caused the Germans to reinforce the West and tie up 45 divisions and 1,500 planes, all needed for the Russian campaigns. Through the lessons of the raid, the Allies developed new landing techniques, new equipment, and new respect for German firepower.
我が艦の重大責任が搭乗員に放送されたとき、When our important mission was announced to the crew, I knew they were prepared to fight. But each man knew that the battle to eat or to be eaten had begun.
In 1942, Yahashi Tanabe was a lieutenant commander and the skipper of the Japanese submarine I-168. Today, he manages a small paper products factory in Japan. In 1942, George T. Edwards was a sailor in the United States Navy, assigned to the carrier Yorktown. He lives today in Southern California and runs a charter boat service.
You might say you're damn worried or scared, but when the fighting starts, you lose that tense feeling. Once the game starts, you're in pretty good shape.
Off the island of Midway, the lives of Yahachi Tanabe and George Edwards came together for a brief moment. Two fighting men, one Japanese, one American, relived that moment in history. I'm Jim Bishop. For the Japanese, the capture of Midway Island is the whole point of their second great offensive. They have already blasted Pearl Harbor, the main link in the chain of Hawaiian islands. Now they are about to step on the end of the chain, Midway. But the planned attack on Midway has an even bigger purpose. It is the Japanese bait to lure what is left of the American Navy into one final battle. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, Commander-in-Chief of the Japanese Combined Fleet, is convinced that Japan must win the war within the first year or lose it later. He is also certain that if he can destroy the American fleet in a decisive battle, the war is won.
Enemy movements. We will be near Midway when the troops land. According to the basic plan, we are to see no action.
American strategy is based on the assumption that Japan has chosen Midway as a target. This has been confirmed by American cryptologists who have broken the Japanese Purple Code. With the advantage of knowing the Japanese plans, Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz sets the trap. Midway Island is strengthened with bombers. After the Japanese have been located by the land-based Midway forces, they are to be hit by planes from the hidden American carriers. Task Force 16, comprising the last two operational carriers, Hornet and Enterprise, are called north at top speed. The day before the American force sails, the carrier Yorktown, damaged in the Coral Sea, limps into Pearl Harbor. Aboard the Yorktown since 1939 is Seaman George Edwards, assigned to Torpedo Squadron 5.
We've been at sea 104 days this time, and we're returning with quite a bit of damage. A 1,000-pounder went clear through the third deck and exploded. When we move into the yards, there is a lot of scuttlebutt about this thing with Midway. Whatever we might be thinking, everybody just bears a hand. Nobody leaves the ship, not even the old man.
It is estimated that repairs will take 90 days, but with the battle imminent, 1,400 workers complete the job in 2 days. The hastily repaired Yorktown leads a second task force to sea. May 31st, the American task forces reach Point Luck, a position 300 miles northeast of Midway. The officers and men are told an attack for the purpose of capturing Midway is expected. The successful conclusion of the operation now commencing will be of great value to our country.
We move up very close to the mouth of the bay and make observations of the land installation and the movement of the troops. It appears that the enemy is patrolling the neighboring seas.
June 3rd, a lone Catalina bomber from Midway spots the Japanese invasion transports. The report is radioed in and a flight of B-17s are ordered out. First encounters caused little damage among the Japanese fleet. At 4:30 a.m. June 4th, the Japanese launched their attack against the Midway Atoll, only 240 miles distant. The first wave of planes leaves in rapid succession from the flight decks of Kaga, Hiryu, Soryu, and Akagi. The Battle of Midway has begun. Although forewarned of the raid, 26 Marine fighters are no match for the superior Zeros. 24 are shot down or badly damaged.
My crew grows more and more excited as I describe the action to them. Shouts of joy echo throughout the submarine.
The attack lasts only 20 minutes. It has wrecked most of the Marine facilities, but causes only minor damage to the airstrips. The Japanese conclude that Midway requires one more strike before invasion. June 4th, 7 a.m. Torpedo planes crowd the flight decks of the 4 Japanese carriers. With the report indicating Midway needs a second pounding, bombs are ordered substituted for torpedoes. At this very moment, the first American planes take off against the unsuspecting Japanese. 28 minutes later, a Japanese scout plane reports 2 American warships 200 miles from Midway. Later, a second report is received, one that surprises the Japanese commanders. The American forces are accompanied by an aircraft carrier. While the Japanese hesitate, American torpedo planes arrive and attack.
Mayday, mayday. I'm ditching.
They got Sherman.
Cover the people.
Bail out.
Well, they
The
carry
wingman's
You
down.
can hear the whole battle over the ship's PA system. You can hear the guys talking about what plane they're in. The whole thing. It's almost like being there with them, especially when you know the guys personally. You hear the communications from one plane to another.
2 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Watch it.
The Japanese carriers are attacked. The American bombers are without the protection of fighters. Of the 15 planes from Hornet, 4 are shot down. Of the 12 Yorktown torpedo planes, 10 are lost. Of the 14 planes from Enterprise, only 4 survive.
Yorktown has caught fire in her stack, and they secured the boilers. Socked in the side and hard hit. The word comes through to abandon ship. I'm kind of stunned. I never thought I'd have to leave under these conditions. And I say to one of my shipmates, well, we're going to have to swim for it now.
5 p.m. American planes from Enterprise come in out of the sun and attack. Four direct hits are scored, and Hiryu was out of action. Admiral Yamamoto orders a general retreat.
Frightening news has come to us over our radio antenna. The Soryu and Kaga have been sunk. Also, the Akagi and Shiryu. When I hear this news, a mixture of anger, disappointment, and fighting spirit boils within me. I have received order. It says, as a result of the attack of our Air Force, a Yorktown-sized carrier is afloat at a point approximately 150 miles northeast of Midway. Submarine I-168 shall move immediately to capture or sink it.
I volunteered for the damage control party, and I'm back on board seeing what I can do to get her back to Pearl. The Hammond stays alongside to furnish power and necessary equipment. The first thing we do is load our guns and get everything ready in case of another attack. The next thing we do is bury our dead. The old man gives the orders to fire the boilers. We'll get back to Pearl under our own power if we have to burn all the furniture in the officers' quarters.
My lookout sights the Yorktown. His voice is shaking with joy. Sees a black shape on the horizon. inside the I-168 is limited to only the most essential ones. I fear to create sounds which American detectors might pick up. But I have privately decided that the enemy's equipment is not very sensitive. This gives me confidence as the range shortens. I do not lower the periscope. The torpedo's wake will soon indicate their course. If the I-168 is to die, I at least want the satisfaction of seeing that our target has been hit. We must succeed. There will be no second chance.
All of a sudden, the Hammond starts firing up the water. I look down and see 10 fingers of torpedo wakes. They're coming right at us.
I order, take her down to 200 feet and full speed ahead.
Throughout the night, American destroyers hunt the submarine without success. It is evident that the Yorktown is doomed. At 6 a.m. on June 7th, she begins to sink.
They have closed the log officially. It is exactly 6 months to the day and the hour when Pearl Harbor was attacked. I'm on a destroyer nearby. There's a man next to me. He spent 30 years in the Navy. He's looking away from the Yorktown and asked me to let him know when she goes down. I think I see tears in his eyes. I thought I was the only one that felt that way.
My heart is filled with a sense of appreciation for my crew. Truly, everyone did well. I feel the kind thoughts of the crew soak throughout my body. I order the Chief Communications Officer to wire the combined fleet. I sank the Yorktown.
In a moment, the conclusion of our story. Following the Battle of Midway, Commander Yahachi Tanabe returns to Japan a hero. He will survive campaigns at Guadalcanal and the Solomons. Seaman Edwards, wounded after the sinking of the Yorktown, will later participate in 2 Pacific invasions. VJ Day will find him at Yokohama Harbor. At Midway, the Japanese suffered a naval disaster. It was evident that the balance of power in the Pacific had swung suddenly in favor of the Americans. Midway would be known as the battle that marked the turning of the tide in the Pacific War. Kiichi Ono is a bank manager in Miyagi Prefecture, Japan. In 1942, he was a Japanese infantry sergeant at Guadalcanal.
Jungleを不気味な静けさは The quietness of a jungle island was very frightening. I was tempted to shout, "You, enemy soldiers, come out of your hiding places. Let us fight like men."
Hyman Chiswick is now a fireman in Oceanside, California. In 1942, he was a private in the United States Marines.
All the stuff that we went through on that island is unbelievable. A lot of guys just cracked up. Nobody really came out of it in one piece.
In the jungle of Guadalcanal, the lives of Hyman Chiswick and Kiichi Ono came together for a brief moment. Two fighting men, one American, one Japanese, relived that moment in history. I'm Jim Bishop. Within the first 5 months of the war, Japan adds the Solomon Islands to its growing list of conquests. To the Americans and the Japanese, the Solomons are a ladder. For the Japanese, the ladder leads down to Australia. For the Americans, it leads up to the home islands of Japan. When two people, or two armies, are trying to move in opposite directions on the same ladder, someone's got to get off or be pushed off. Guadalcanal is a step on that ladder. It will soon become a battleground. Guadalcanal, 90 miles by 25, most of it disease-infested jungle. But armed with Japanese planes, this island can be used like a knife to cut the American lifeline to Australia. June 30th, 1942. Men of the Japanese Imperial Navy begin building an airstrip on Guadalcanal. Miles away, U.S. Marines arrive at Wellington, New Zealand. One of them, an 18-year-old private first class assigned to a machine gun platoon in the newly organized Marine 1st Division, Hyman Chiswick.
New Zealand is beautiful. Don't like the beer too much. It's kind of bitter. The people are pretty friendly, and the women aren't bad either.
The Marines begin training for a future campaign in the Pacific. They don't expect to see action for another 6 months. They're green, many of them fresh out of boot camp. They need time. Combat veterans. But out at sea, the only thing they have to kill is time.
Nothing happens, we're real surprised. We're even kind of disappointed. It looks beautiful, more like a vacation spot than anything else. The smell hits you right away. It must be the jungle. But it's going to get worse when guys start getting killed. The Americans land unopposed. Most of the Japanese have run back into the jungle.
The first day, Marines get what they came for, the airstrip. They call it Henderson Field, after a Marine pilot who was killed at Midway. The Japanese have been caught by surprise. The American counteroffensive was not expected for another year and a half. Japanese combat troops, scheduled for invasions of New Caledonia, Samoa, and the Fiji Islands, are alerted. Among them, the crack troops of the Kawaguchi Brigade. Attached to the Kawaguchi, a veteran of the China and Java campaigns, Sergeant Kiichi Ono.
Our orders are suddenly changed. We are to recapture Guadalcanal airstrip from the Americans. It is a magnificent order.
The Japanese plan is to strike fast before the Americans can bring in enough reinforcements to hold the island. The night after the American invasion, a Japanese task force steams down the slot, a channel running down between the Solomon Islands to 4 heavy cruisers sunk. 1 destroyer is a total loss. Over 1,000 men are killed in the attack. For the American Navy, it is the worst disaster since Pearl Harbor. In just half an hour, the Japanese have changed the entire picture of an easy American victory at Guadalcanal. The battered American Navy has no choice but to withdraw. The Marines must now hold the island alone, with no support from the sea or the air, short on food and ammunition, waiting to be attacked. Marine engineers work around the clock to finish the airfield. Marines use captured Japanese equipment to do the job. Every day, Japanese bombs blow new holes in the ground. But 5 days after landing, the field is ready. The first American plane lands on Guadalcanal. A week later, there is a whole squadron. American planes keep the Japanese from landing reinforcements during the daylight hours. Under cover of darkness, it's a different story. A train of Japanese cruisers and destroyers, the Tokyo Express, makes regular nightly runs down the slot. The Kawaguchi Brigade, one of the best trained units in the Imperial Army, moves on to Guadalcanal.
We do not fear the Americans. They are small in number. We can finish them off in 1 week's battle. Our army is invincible.
Two weeks after the American invasion, the Japanese make their first move to retake the airfield. Is suicidal. Outnumbered more than 4 to 1, nearly 1,000 Japanese are cut down on the banks of the Tinaroo River. D-6. A second Japanese regiment lands on Guadalcanal. They are to meet with Kawaguchi, combine forces, and attack Henderson Field from 3 directions at once. The Japanese attack is set for September 12th. The Japanese High Command has been promised by General Kawaguchi that by October 10th, his headquarters will be on Henderson Field. But the unfamiliar island cripples the plan. Instead of being close together, the 2 Japanese units are 70 miles apart, with dense jungles and American Marines in between.
We expect to be engaged in a bloody combat, but to our great surprise, the Americans do not fire a single shot. The quietness is more frightening than sound of guns.
We wonder if anybody's coming, but the jungle's so thick, we can't see anything. It makes you kind of trigger happy. As soon as you hear something, you want to start shooting. You're never sure whether a sniper's in front of you or behind you. First, you get cold and your teeth start to chatter. Pretty soon, you're shaking like a leaf. Then you start burning up. You're weak as hell, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Quinine is scarce. The medics give out atabrine pills to check the spread of malaria. But rumors don't help. Many Marines throw the pills away, thinking that they cause sterility, or that the yellow stain on the skin and eyes will become permanent. In the first month alone, malaria puts more than 1,000 Marines out of action. In the months to come, more than 8,000 Marines will be hospitalized, but only 3 cases prove fatal. The Japanese, with no medical supplies, are hit hard. Before the campaign is over, 9,000 Japanese will die from disease. If it isn't malaria, there's always beriberi, dysentery, or malnutrition.
Our men lose even the strength to wipe the sweat from their faces. It is very hot.
Marine intelligence drastically underestimates the strength of the Japanese forces. At the point of attack, 700 Marines will face over 2,000 Japanese.
All this stuff flying around, guys getting hit, and nothing's happening to you. You know, sooner or later, something's got to happen. Sometimes you wish you'd get hit and get it over with already.
Monday the 14th. The Japanese launched their full-scale attack. Begin to crack. The Marines pull back to their final line of defense, a ridge, only 1,000 yards from Henderson Field. Then they play their ace in the hole. matter how great a victory might seem, in terms of human life, war is a losing battle. The Battle of the Ridge is over. History will call it Bloody Ridge. In a moment, the conclusion of our story. In December 1942, the 1st Marine Division is relieved by the U.S. Army. PFC Hyman Chiswick is shipped to Australia. Later, he will land with the Marines at New Guinea and New Britain. Sergeant Kiichi Ono is hit by mortar fire and is evacuated to a Japanese hospital in Rabaul. When his wounds heal, he fights in Burma only to be taken prisoner by the British. An epitaph on the grave of one who remained perhaps best sums up the battle that was Guadalcanal. And when he goes to heaven, to St. Peter he will tell, "Another Marine reporting, sir. I've served my time in hell."
我々は火炎放射器の攻撃を受け、壕内は完膚なきまでに焼き尽くされてしまった。We were attacked by flamethrowers, and the inside of my pillbox was charged to the walls. If any human being had lived through the fire, it must be called a true miracle. Yet a miracle did happen.
Tadao Onuki was a chief petty officer in the Imperial Japanese Navy. He was on the island of Tarawa in 1943. Today, he drives a taxi cab in Tokyo. Mickey Franklin is a beer and wine distributor today, living with his family in Southern California. In 1943, he fought at Tarawa as a sergeant in the U.S. Marine Corps.
I don't care where you were on that island, you were right in the middle of the battle. The water was an awful red color from the blood of all the men who had lost their lives. It was a horrible thing to see.
On the tiny atoll of Tarawa, the lives of Tadao Onuki and Mickey Franklin came together for a brief moment. Two fighting men, one Japanese, one American, relived that moment in history. For nearly 2 years, the Gilbert Islands, located 2,500 miles southwest of Hawaii, have been under Japanese occupation. In the Gilberts is a group called Tarawa, and its principal island is Baishio. 3,800 yards long, 600 yards wide, the tiny atoll includes an airfield and a defense system that make it, in 1943, one of the most heavily fortified islands in the world. Surrounding the island, barbed wire, and on the beaches, a barricade built of coconut logs. Captured 8-inch guns from Singapore guard the coastal approaches. Field guns, pillboxes, anti-aircraft guns, and machine guns are planted across the island. A series of shelters with 5-foot-thick concrete roofs and 10-foot-thick walls is constructed. Only a direct hit by a 2,000-pound bomb can smash them. The Japanese have not only fortified Tarawa, but have moved 4,500 of their best Marines in to defend it. The island commander,
Our company is called the 3rd Special Base Company of Yokosuka, and we spend many busy days building the positions and battle training. There is hardly any speculation about the war or about our assignments to Petio. If someone is foolish enough to ask, what are we doing here? Or, what is the point of holding this little strip of rock? We quickly silence him, for fear the talk will leak to the higher officers. In the Imperial Navy, such individual breaches of discipline bring a mass punishment for all.
2nd Marine Division, tough veterans of Guadalcanal and Tulagi. When the troops hit the beach, they will be under the command of Colonel David M. Shoup. One of the Marines aboard is his runner, 18-year-old Private First Class Mickey Franklin.
4 days after we put out to sea, they tell us where we're going. They bring out a map of Tarawa showing the coral reef and everything. When we hear about all the shelling and bombing they are going to do before we land, everybody feels a little more relieved. Most of us now feel as though we can practically run up there on the island and take it over. The whole island is supposed to be level before we get there. I don't really feel much different about going to Tarawa than when we went in at Guadalcanal or Tulagi. Our practice maneuvers for this one are about the same, except the pressure seems to be on a little bit more. Not from the men themselves, but from the higher-ups. They want things done with more accuracy and everything.
D-Day is set for November 20th, and 1 week before, 400 planes begin around-the-clock bombing. Bombing cannot obliterate all of Baishio's defenses. November 18th, cruisers and destroyers join the attack. Admiral Kingman says of the bombardment,
Almost every day, the enemy sends their battleships and large aircraft. Once they attacked us for 24 hours, it has little effect. While we wait for the enemy attack, I am assigned to a tank company and it is ready for action.
as the American task force approaches Tarawa, the Marines are briefed on the assault plans. Amphibious tractors, Amtraks, will be used, as well as conventional landing craft to take them over the reef to 3 beaches, called Red Beaches 1, 2, and 3. After landing, the Marines are to sweep across the airfield in the center and push the enemy down the long, narrow part of the island. One officer says, "Some think we can take it in 3 hours. I think it may take a little longer."
Somebody says, all we got to do is walk on this island and it's ours. It doesn't always work out that way. You sort of have in the back of your mind that it isn't going to be that easy.
Early morning, November 20th, Batio comes into sight. By 3:55, the Marines have finished their steak breakfast and are going down the cargo nets into the landing craft. Batio is quiet.
The day has come. The enemy destroyers shower us with shells. Explosions are so heavy that you almost feel Batio change its shape under you. You even get the feeling that it might suddenly sink into the sea forever.
After 30 minutes, the shelling is halted to allow one final airstrike before the circling boats start their run into the beach. There is a blunder, and the planes are late. For 20 minutes, the Japanese fire at the unprotected transports. Finally, at 6:15, carrier bombers sweep over the island for a 7-minute bombardment.
Carrier-based planes bomb us from the air, and in a short time the whole island is enveloped with fire and black smoke.
The naval bombardment is resumed. In 2.5 hours, 3,000 tons of explosives are poured onto the island. Batio's defenders have to be obliterated, because when the first wave lands, the only armor a Marine will have is his khaki shirt.
We see them coming in many landing craft. They probably think we have been overwhelmed by the bombing and shelling.
The first wave of United States Marines coming into Red Beach 1 is caught in a deadly crossfire. Undamaged shelters, the Japanese rake the beaches with fire, pin the troops down behind the log barrier. The tide is working for the Japanese. It is too low. Only the Amtraks have a faint chance of making it. From the beginning, landing craft are in trouble, trapped on the reef.
I'm in the third wave, and even before we get into the beach, some of the first and second waves are coming back. We're going in on an amphibian tractor, but about 150 yards offshore, it just completely conks out. So we just have to start waiting. So many things go through your mind when something like this happens. You're in the water up to your neck, and you can't stop or anything. Nobody in front of you and very few in back of you. And you just have to keep going.
By 11 a.m., Colonel Shoup is directing the attack from a position alongside the narrow pier which juts out into the lagoon.
When everything opens up, the colonel yells at us to get as close to the pier as we can. Don't go in any further. He says to stop landing troops and puts out a call for strafing. There must be 200 killed already, right in the water.
By the middle of the day, most of the Amtraks have been wrecked or sunk. None of the other landing craft can make it over the reef. The bodies of dead and dying Marines are strewn across the water. Ammunition is low, water is almost gone, and plasma is exhausted. 1,500 men are pinned down along the narrow, bloody strip of sand. And from their officers, all messages to Colonel Shoup agree. Situation desperate. Afternoon of the first day, the Marines struggle to move off Tarawa's narrow beach. And all afternoon, the Japanese keep them flat in the sand.
It appears that we have broken their landing attempt. Enemy craft are running aground, and enemy soldiers are falling left and right under our thundering fire. But the enemy advances through our fire along the beach, jumping over the dead bodies of their comrades.
Carrier-based planes come in for almost continuous bombing and strafing.
After we get past the wall, we make our way to one of the pillboxes and the colonel sets up his command post. He tells us to dig in and stand fast for the night. My foxhole is 15 feet away from our ammunition dump. If they ever hit it, we'll be blowing sky high.
By the end of D-Day, about 5,000 Marines have made it onto the beach, and about 1,500 of them are wounded or dead. As the men dig in to spend a nightmare ashore, Colonel Shoup is heard to say, "This is the damnedest crap game I ever got into." The morning of D+1, the last of the divisional reserves start to wade the long, dangerous way over the reef. Halfway across, they are suddenly cut down by a murderous crossfire. During the night, Japanese machine gunners swim out and hide themselves in an old, half-sunken hull. Carrier planes come in to put them out of action. For 5 hours, under a blistering sun, the reserves continue battling their way ashore. When Colonel Shoup calls for more reserves, the answer he gets is, "We are ready to land the cooks and truck drivers." Finally, at noon on D+1, more than 36 hours late, the tide rises, and with it rise the hopes of the desperate invasion force. For the first time, landing craft begin to slip over the top of the reef. Men and supplies pour onto the beach. By 4 o'clock, Colonel Shoup reports, "Our casualties heavy. Enemy casualties unknown. Situation, we are winning." By the middle of the afternoon, some of the Marines have broken out of the beachhead, are fighting their way across the island. By 5 o'clock, they are across the airfield and have a foothold on the southern shore. The island is split in two.
Our forces have lost much food and ammunition, and we are no longer a match for the enemy. In spite of all, our soldiers courageously fight and shake the guts of the American forces.
All afternoon, casualties are evacuated. The landing craft move them out to the waiting ships in a steady shuttle service.
Once I am with two comrades and they were ahead of me. Suddenly there exposed an enemy shell with a thundering blast. And my two comrades are gone. They have disappeared, blown to bits without a trace in a split second.
The smell of death is nauseating in the tropic heat. Even while the battle continues, mass graves are scooped out and filled.
As much as we hate to see it happen, the only way of getting rid of the bodies is to take a bulldozer and bury the Americans on one side and the Japanese on the other. There's too many dead on this campaign.
On the morning of D+2, the Japanese commander on Tarawa sends out his last message. Our weapons have been destroyed, and from now on, everyone is attempting a final charge. May Japan exist for 10,000 years. The morning of D+3 dawns on another sickening scene. Last night, the Japanese ran screaming into the Marine lines in a last frantic banzai charge. Their dead, 300 of them, are strewn across a grim landscape. Only 500 Japanese are still alive, and against these, the Marines move in a steady and relentless drive. From 8 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, the Marines systematically kill 475 of the 500 remaining Japanese.
Now we begin to find out that the bombing hasn't really knocked out those big pillboxes. They are practically untouched. So we try with the flamethrowers. You have to get up close enough to the slits in the pillboxes so you can burn them out, and then get around to the back entrance and just dig them out. After we secure some of these pillboxes, we find bodies inside are practically stacked on top of each other.
I wait in our bunker for the time we will make our last charge. Suddenly, our bunker is turned into a fire of hell in 1 second by the Americans. Inside, it is completely burning. Gradually, I become conscious. I'm pressed under something heavy and cannot move my body. I'm pressed under the charred bodies of my fellow soldiers. But I still have life. When I get out, I cannot believe it. And I just stand as in a dream.
Seabees and Marine engineers work all morning on the airstrip. At noon, the first carrier-based plane comes in for a landing. 1:12 in the afternoon, not quite 76 hours after the first Marine hit the beach, Tarawa is declared secure. In a moment, the conclusion of our story. Mickey Franklin, now a sergeant, receives several shrapnel wounds and sees no more action. Chief Petty Officer Tadeo Onuki is one of only 17 Japanese to survive the Battle of Tarawa. Is later amazed when his captors give him medical attention instead of killing him. The war comes to an end for Onuki in the American prisoner of war camp in Texas. The 2-square-mile patch of coral is a devastated prize, a burned and blackened graveyard for 4,500